the splinter of Aethys. It rests in a shrine deep within this temple complex, beyond the reach of looters, visitors, or indeed, myself. Return it to me, and who knows, perhaps you will meet your expedition along the way.
Try that again. Good one.
I did not expect you to be so thorough in your explorations. Nevertheless, I am impressed. There's nothing to fear. You won't feel a thing.
Wow, how exciting. I don't know about you, but I get chills watching a trailer like that when I know about all the adventures I'm about to have. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for joining us today, and welcome, Ryan. My name's Stephanie Bendixson, and I'm thrilled to be leading us through this fireside chat with Ryan Warden, the production director of Avowed at Obsidian. So welcome, Ryan.
Awesome. Shucks. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've seen that trailer a bunch of times, I'm sure, but you
times.
still get chills watching it. I saw you enjoying it back there, even.
Just when the music starts to swell, and oh man, everything starts to come together in that moment.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, for me to work on, if I imagine myself working on a game like that, it's a thrilling prospect of escapism and transportation. So. Yeah, I suppose I would love to kind of kick things off a little bit generally, but just speaking a little bit about your background. So I think when we look at your career, you've worked on a number of different games, which is pretty exciting for people to even comprehend. Mass Effect, League of Legends, Fallout, we can see some of them here, Outer Worlds, Grounded.
Oh boy, so I should throw some caveats there. I didn't work on all of these necessarily. I just happen to work at Obsidian right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah, right. Okay. Fair enough. But this is one of those opportunities for you to maybe share something with people that maybe you've always wanted to be able to deliver in terms of game design and I suppose adventure. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in games and what kind of drove you to create these kinds of experiences for people?
Sure, absolutely. So I started out as a junior, like low-level tools programmer at BioWare. I had a cup of coffee with the Jade Empire team just as we were going into certification there, so about the last 6 months of the game. And then moved on over into Mass Effect as a tools programmer, and I am not a particularly good programmer. So I made the switch to the dark side of production, where I get to drink coffee and send email all day, and that suits me just fine. So took on different kinds of teams and worked my way through a couple of different projects at BioWare, culminating rather in Dragon Age Inquisition. And then I was scraping the car windshield one morning. It was a bitterly cold February morning. And I looked up at the sky, which was midnight dark, and I said, I'm an adult. I don't have to live in the cold anymore. And I started looking around like, I hear California is nice. And so I started up with Riot in about 2015 and did a little bit of time with League of Legends and then Legends of Runeterra. And Obsidian came calling. And Obsidian has been at the top of a very short list of companies where if they ever wanted to have a conversation, oh boy, do I ever want to have that conversation. So I got lucky enough to work with the fine folks at Obsidian, and now I'm working on Avowed.
And so you joined Obsidian in 2022.
Yep.
Can you, for people that aren't aware, can you walk us through, I suppose, what exactly the role is of a production director? What's a day in the life for you?
Sure. So if you think of the game director, so the game director is kind of the what and the why, whereas a production director is more of the when and the how. So I work with our game director, Carrie Patel, and she defines the vision and says, hey, these are the things that we want to accomplish with the game. And I say, cool. And then work with the rest of the production team and the directors and the leads to try to figure out, okay, how are we going to accomplish all of that? And how are we going to do that on time, on budget, and to a high degree of quality? So a day in the life is generally just talking to an awful lot of people and bringing people together to try to figure out, okay, so this thing that we want to do, how do we accomplish that in the time that we have remaining and with the budget that we have? But we have to have still a high quality bar because we have to live up to Obsidian standards and create another great RPG.
When we look at, I suppose, the body of work that Obsidian has brought us, was there a standout game for you that really made you excited about working on this team?
Two, in fact. So this goes all the way back to KOTOR 2, which I first played, and I was like, oh, wow. That's better than the original. And so I was like, okay, Obsidian, I'm going to keep an eye out for y'all. And then, believe it or not, and this is a somewhat spicy take, Alpha Protocol. Alpha Protocol made such... Yeah, Alpha Protocol is great.
Waiting for that.
Alpha Protocol made such an impression on me, and I remember talking to this to game directors that I worked with years in the future, talking about the way that Alpha Protocol didn't let you fail, necessarily. They were always setting the player up for success. So a good example is, if you're sneaking around, you want to play a little bit of stealthy gameplay, but you set off an alarm, it gives you a combat buff. And I loved that. That was the first time that I'd ever seen that. And I was also marveling at how complicated all of the interconnected RPG systems must have been in order to deliver on that. And that just left an indelible impression on me to the point where I was talking about it to people years later. So yeah, KOTOR 2 and Alpha Protocol sort of made me go, oh, okay, Obsidian.
And so at what point in the process did you learn about Avowed as a project and that this was one that you were likely to be a part of?
Mm-hmm. So I learned about it during the interview process to come over to Obsidian, and I got to talk to a lot of great people. I got to talk to, I think my second interview was with Fergus, who was running Black Isle Studios back in the day and who was one of the founders of Obsidian. And so that was kind of a kind of sit up a little bit straight kind of moment. And then I got to talk to Carrie and the rest of the directors, and it seemed like it was going to be a good fit. And so here we are. I'm just over the moon to be able to be working with the team.
Can you tell us anything about it so far beyond what we've seen in the trailer? I know we won't focus on it too much because we're all going to get to play it eventually, and it's very exciting. But
Yeah.
can you give us a little bit of something?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are unfamiliar, Avowed is the next fantasy RPG from Obsidian, and it's set in the world of Aora, which was first brought to life in the Pillars of Eternity games. But this is a really neat opportunity for us to be able to really immerse the player into the world of Aora, because it's a first-person perspective as opposed to the previous Pillars games, which were isometric in nature. So you get that sort of three-quarter top-down view. And as a result of going first-person, as I said earlier, the immersion is just so much greater. This is the first time that you can see the sky in Aora, which is so cool. You can see the moon, and we've got some pretty awesome skyboxes. So
Was that always the intention, to make it first person?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we've got a third-person mode for those who can't play in first person, but just my own personal preference, I love playing in first person.
Yeah, it's nice to have the option. Every now and again, I like to be able to just see my character and see the gear that I pick up and stuff. But
For sure.
For the immersion, it's nice to be able to, to switch between the two and really feel like you're in the game. Well, let's talk a little bit more about, I suppose, all the various groups that are kind of involved in the project of making a game, and I suppose how you go about wrangling all of those different departments to work together to make something as big as a game like this.
Yeah. So there's just a huge number of people, and we've got about 100 people internally working on the game, with plenty more working with us in co-dev and contract and indeed outsourced capabilities. So it's a pretty good-sized team, and that runs the gamut from character art and tech art and environment art all the way through. And I'm going to avoid naming every single discipline on here because we'd be here for a while, and I'd surely miss somebody and risk offending them. All the way through to our world builders and QA at the opposite end of the alphabet. So we've got a huge amount of people. And bringing all of them together is an exercise in pretty basic project management. Although there's a little bit of a twist, because if you were to just work on a sort of discipline by discipline basis and say, okay, so this discipline is doing things on this date, and you're going to be followed by this, and you're going to be followed by this, and we have a nice, clear waterfall picture. There's a trick there where you might fall prey to a sort of bias that can be common in applying just strict project management to video game production, where you might say, okay, listen, we've got 4 regions, and each region has to have, to pick a number, 4 trees. Therefore, if you make 16 trees, boom, you got a video game. And if we just keep everybody busy making 16 trees, hey, no problem. So on the one hand, you've got to start with pretty classic project management to understand what work needs to be done when. But on the other, you've got to be bringing people together in sort of agile development to make sure that people are talking and communicating and collaborating on what is the highest priority work that's going to be driving our vision forward to a successful outcome.
I feel like, I feel fortunate to even be having this conversation with you today, because I feel like a lot of the discussion around game dev in the past has been quite closed, particularly with larger publishers and development studios, very protective of that process. But more and more now we're starting to see people share a little bit more about what's involved in making a game, particularly at a larger studio. And I think that's really a fascinating insight, because it does seem like sometimes an insurmountable task to bring that many people together. Do you feel like I saw the Naughty Dog documentary recently, and they were sort of quite candid about how when production timelines are delayed and things like that, it can really kind of affect people in different ways. When you have an obstacle or a delay or something that kind of has a domino effect on the entire team, how do you kind of go about picking up the pieces to get everyone back on task again, or make everyone feel equally valued when things are as difficult?
That's such a good question. And it's kind of tricky to give one singular answer because everybody's different and everybody's got different motivations. Certainly, I can recall earlier points in my career where we were working hard on a game, and I was getting close to my limit. I just wanted the game to be out, and sort of my boss's boss ran into me in the halls and said like, oh, it seems almost as if we were to get like a 6-month extension on this, you would not be a happy guy about that. You wouldn't think like, yeah, this is the time to add quality into the game. You just kind of want this to be done. And so I want to be mindful of that and what everybody's going through because it's going to be different for every person. But I think that overall, if you can demonstrate progress and if you can build forward momentum, that almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you as an individual person can see and feel that momentum in the studio and in your work. And you can also feel your teammates' momentum as well. And so really generating that forward progress to say, hey, come on, gang, we're going over here. We're going in this direction. Come on, come with me. I think that that's a tremendously motivating thing, and it just feels good at the end of the day, even if it maybe started in a place of bad feels.
Yeah. Are there specific tools that you employ to kind of keep people feeling that sense of forward momentum or just the sort of workflow moving from one department into another?
Yeah, we've got lots of dashboards and we've got lots of production
Kanban boards.
Yeah, Kanban boards. There's a really great tool that we use called Airtable, which is able to slice and dice data, and it bidirectionally links things. Sorry, I'm going to get into spreadsheet talk here for
this is nerdy
for
in a very
little bit.
specific way, but I know it hits hard for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. So it allows us to sort of slice and dice data in a really, really fast manner. I was actually using it to provide updates to a whole bunch of contracts just recently, and just visualizing data extremely quickly in an easy-to-digest manner is really useful. So yeah, we absolutely use Airtable, but also we're tremendously lucky in that we have a core technology group that operates as sort of like centralized tool development, and oh boy, talk about momentum. They have come up with some absolute wizardry for us, to the point where we can click on a link, on like kind of a hyperlink. I'm going to do some hand waving here. But basically for the end user purposes, it's basically like clicking a hyperlink on like a Confluence page, and it takes you to a spot in the game. If you have the game up and running, you click on a hyperlink, thunk, and it takes you to that spot. So, oh boy, we've got a QA save library full of, like, here are the most important points in the game when you're going through various quests. Click a link, thunk, it loads you into that instantly, along with everything that you need to progress the quest. All the quest variables are set, you're equipped with the right equipment.
That's amazing.
It just gets you going there. That's like game changing,
yeah.
and so we have, and that's just one facet of our brilliant core tech group, and they just make things so easy for us.
Did you patent that?
We ought to.
Amazing. Is there an aspect of game development that you feel like that people should know about that maybe they don't, that really kind of stands out to you?
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about QA for a second.
Okay.
There's at least at one point there was a trope on the internet where people would come across bugs in the wild in a released game and would say something along the lines of, "Oh man, like lazy QA didn't find that bug." And I would like to dispel that myth right now. If you come across a bug in the wild in a released game, QA absolutely found that. That is my fault. That is me going through the bug database on a regular basis, saying, "We don't have enough time. This is too risky a fix for the time that we have available. We've got to punt this to a future release." Absolutely, no question. QA has found that. They have done their jobs, and they are making our lives better every single day. And it's a producer like me who goes, unfortunately, there's just not enough time. In the clip that we saw earlier, that was a demo that we took to Gamescom just recently. And there was a pretty big bug that we found the thumb drives were already loaded. You know, that you had the steel briefcase that was handcuffed to people's hands. They were going on planes to Germany, and we found a pretty significant bug in the AI navigation in one of the key areas. And that would mean that all NPCs, including your companions, might have some kind of goofy behavior there. And the Gamescom build is, you know, a pretty important thing. And I had to put the brakes on that and go, we need more time. That can't go into the shipping build that we are sending out the door to Germany to show off to people. It's just too risky. We need more time for testing. We need to make sure that we don't cause further problems by trying to fix one at the last possible second. And so we were generating additional builds to act as a sort of like a fail-safe mechanism, just in case we could actually get it done. And we were able to do more testing and sort of prove out that this is something that was absolutely worthwhile. But that just goes to reinforce, if you come across a bug in the wild, that is a producer.
Yeah, I always felt like being a game tester would be fun, but I think in reality it can be quite maddening if you're going over the same section of a game over and over.
I think you have to be of a certain mindset to really dig into that, and thank goodness there are people who are of that mindset, because it makes the game better.
Yeah. Well, let's shift now to a little bit more about your process working on Avowed, because this is obviously a game that's, as you said, grounded in a larger franchise, and that means that you have the opportunity to make something that sort of celebrates that world while still bringing something new to it. How do you figure out which aspects of that to kind of preserve and stay true to while still trying to be innovative and surprising people?
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring this back to more of a production methodology, because it's kind of my wheelhouse. So I'm a big believer in identifying in pre-production all of those features that you want into the game, and then really breaking them down to a granular level, so that you can line each one up with the various pillars of the game, and say, like, does this correspond with Weird Wondrous Frontier? Does this correspond with Stronger Together? Does this correspond with moment-to-moment momentum? Does this correspond, so on and so on, rooted in Pillars of Eternity? Okay, cool. So now we can say, wait a minute, this one doesn't map to any of them. Do we really want to do that? And then once you have something that's mapped up against the actual pillars of the game that you're making, then you can start to say, okay, what do we want to do for each individual feature? There might be features where we don't want to innovate at all. Like this is pretty bog standard. A good example might be the party select screen. There's really no need to innovate on a party select screen. Let's save our innovation calories for something that would really matter. So so we have the known quantities. What are the ones that we want to just plus one, just a little bit, just add a little sweetener to? Okay, we can name all of those. And then what are the ones where we really want to innovate? Is that something where we want to really innovate on combat, for example? Then you can, here again, slice and dice all of the data and say, we're really planning to iterate on a lot, and we're trying to innovate on a lot. Should we be doing that? Are we potentially biting off more than we can chew? And then you can sort of pare that down a little bit. So I realize that that's a very hypothetical answer here, but one of the things that we were really trying to push on was combat and generating that sort of moment-to-moment momentum versus a more sort of tactical, isometric CRPG. And also a sense of exploration throughout the world, where, in an isometric CRPG, you can be somewhat limited in your view experience. If you open up the whole world to people, and it's in that immersive first-person view, such that you can say, hey, I want to go over there. Well, you better let people go over there. You better let them explore. You better encourage that exploration. And you should reward them for it. And that's something that I'm really proud of with this team and this game, is that exploration feels so awesome. At the risk of belaboring the point, and I'm going to stop real soon, I had a play test for about 3 days just recently. I was able to play the game for 8 hours a day, 3 days out of the week. And I was determined to try to make it as far as I possibly could in the game. And I was having so much fun just exploring the world and living in the world and saying like, hey, what's over there? There's a waterfall. Yeah, okay, cool, I'm gonna go over there. And maybe there's a piece of lore or some environmental storytelling that gives the sense of a world that feels lived in. Maybe there's a piece of loot. Maybe I can upgrade a weapon and get more powerful. I was having so much fun just exploring the world that I was taking a little bit longer doing that. And I kind of had to speed up, and I was feeling chagrined for having to speed up because exploration in this game is really cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. That's a wonderful problem to have, though, when you
It
feel like
is
you
a
just
good problem to
want the
have.
world to be a playground for you to enjoy. And that's so important, I think, particularly of fantasy RPGs, when that's, I would say, a focus for a lot of people. I can't even imagine how many things there must be that developers in the game would be coming up with that you would potentially have to let go of because it can't be a priority, or it would take too much time, or it's just, you'd be having to, as you say, even with the bugs, pick and choose the things that are worth devoting time to. I mean, do you ever have those moments where you're like, I know that I shouldn't say yes to this, but like, just don't tell anyone, just work on it for another week and we'll see what comes of it?
Yes. Yes. And, yep. Absolutely. One of the more player-facing versions of that is wands. Actually.
Really?
Yeah. For the longest time, wands were not in the game, and then studio design director Josh Sawyer, who was game director and helped build the universes for the Pillars games, kind of said, there's wands in Pillars, right?
Just saying.
Should probably do that. And we said, yeah, that's a big miss. It's kind of late in production to do that, though. And so it was kind of that moment where it's like, shh, just go. And it takes so much effort from the team. And for the longest time, we had these sort of like unmodeled, untextured rods, kind of like the and I'm going to date myself here, but the inanimate carbon rod from The Simpsons, like, except it wasn't glowing green. It was just this untextured gray like cylinder, and the player would just cylinder thing, and there would be no VFX projectiles. They're like barely animations because we had to build all of that. We had to like actually get the weapon art for the wands. We had to skin it and texture it, and we had to like do animations for that and do all of the VFX. And I'm really, really glad that we did. Sorry, before I go on about how glad we are, there were producers on the team who were going like, "Are you nuts? We can't be doing all of this work," and now I'm really glad that we did because it's so much fun. It is just such a distinguishing factor. It's true to the Pillars universe, and certainly in like first person when you're just wand slinging, it feels awesome. And that was the right call, even though it was very, very late in production.
What about, I suppose, other surprises, things that you thought might be straightforward that ended up being unexpected or complicated, or things that worked in a way that you didn't think they would, or things that didn't that you thought would be easy?
Oh yeah. So we've been doing actually a lot of playtesting with the Microsoft User Research Group, where we've had people come in, like actual members of the public, come in, sign NDAs, and sit down at PlayStations and play through 4 to 10 to 20 hours of the game for a good couple of years now. And one of the benefits of that is that we get to sort of A/B test and validate our assumptions. And one of the hallmarks of the Pillars of Eternity franchise is this sort of intermingling of both politics and metaphysics, which, as you might expect, is kind of hard to get across in a very straightforward manner. And so one of the things that we were kind of curious about was, are we nailing it? Is this easy to understand who you are in the game and what you're doing and what is your motivation? And we thought we nailed it. We thought we were doing pretty good, and we put it in front of people, and we're like, oh, let's bask in the glory of my genius. But we put it in front of people, and they didn't really get it. We just, despite our best intentions, we just weren't quite making it clear enough. And so we did a bunch of different iterations on that. And we've gotten to a point where it's pretty good and we're pretty happy with it. And we're consistently getting good results back from people to say like, yeah, no, I'm following the story and it is easier to understand. So we've been able to make some degree of politics and metaphysics meld nicely.
Yeah. Amazing. Are there any, I guess, other notable challenges that that you faced? Every production development journey has challenges, of course, but was there any standout ones that you kind of had to really kind of rethink things in order to overcome them?
I mean, pretty much all the time. I think one of the things that we can point to was the state of combat with the game, where it's had a couple of ebbs and flows. It's funny. It's one of those things where you can have the best intentions in the world, but in every creative process, be it a song or a movie or a game, I think it starts to take on a life of its own and a direction of its own. And it should be sort of true to the original direction that you were establishing, but it's gonna kind of have its own quirks. And so we were following that with combat, and we were like, oh, okay, we're kind of happy with this. This is kind of not quite in the direction that we're going. Let's see. We need to pivot that a little bit. And so we were working on that, but at the same time had to release some game trailers, and the game trailers that we released happened while we were still pivoting combat a little bit, and we were like, I don't know. Let's see how that goes. And we got a ton of really good feedback from the community, and that there again kind of validated, oh, okay, this is good. We do need to make the pivot that we've been working on for the past little while, and just. I know you saw this, but it's already several months out from when we were starting to make a pivot, so don't worry, wait for the next one. It's really going to come in line again. And we were tremendously proud to then release the next trailer that showed off combat in a much better light and was much more reflective of the work that we were doing to try to bring that back into true. And the reaction from the community was really, really positive, and so that was super heartening to see.
I find, player feedback is probably one of the things that I find really interesting, and this probably rings more true for live service games and people that are sort of constantly responding to the game after it's been released. But were there any other surprising moments that came as a result of game testing or player feedback that resulted in significant changes to the game? I suppose, because I think that always really interests me when a studio not only has a clear idea for how they want something to be and then has to adapt, but has the, the understanding that it needs to happen at that stage of the process.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me sort of think for a second. Because it's been a little while. We're definitely in this sort of closed down state right now. So I'm having to dig back through the memory banks on that one a little bit.
I suppose, how about unexpected ways you've seen players interact with the game? Because I feel like even just at PAX, if I'm playing an indie game and stuff, there's always a moment where I'll do something and maybe I'll break it in some way, and the dev is like, huh, I've never seen anyone do that before. Where did you even go? And I'm like, I don't know, man. And I'm like, is this a diss at me as a player?
Thank you for the clarification on that one, because that helped jog things a little bit. So we did a little work on the grimoire interface. So for those maybe not as up on it, so you can use grimoires. So basically books of magic spells in the game to fire off some magic spells a little bit more easily. So if you don't spend your talent points on learning that skill via your ability menu, you can still launch the skill if you have the appropriate grimoire equipped. And we were like, okay, this is pretty much a solved problem. We're going to bring up sort of a grimoire radial that allows you to pick the spells that you want to fire off and fire them off. And to your point, it just wasn't landing. And we thought, like, oh, we've made it so clear. You just have to do, it's right there. It's just right there on the screen. You just do that. But it wasn't landing, and it just wasn't landing for enough people that eventually you go, okay, well, no, the problem is here. We've got to address this a little bit. So yeah, we kind of took that back to the workshop and really refactored the way that grimoires work. And now it's much faster to use. It's much more intuitive, and we put that in front of people's hands, and they just got used to it really quick, and it became this sort of muscle memory thing that actually was better. If one of the things that you want to prioritize is that moment-to-moment momentum in combat, people are doing it just via muscle memory right now, as opposed to just sort of stopping the game and fumbling with it a little bit, and maybe they hit the right thing. So yeah, that's a really good example of a time where, yeah, we thought we had it, and we kind of had to go back to the drawing board a little bit.
You mentioned you're sort of in the sort of closed down stage of things now. I'm curious, and I've just learned this from documentaries, that it's kind of changed my understanding of how game development works, and maybe every studio is different. When you see like what we call a vertical slice of a game, I assume that's something that's been specifically worked on as a demo to show people. But I guess in my mind, a game kind of works like a painting, where you made the whole thing in gray blobs, and then you added another layer, and then you kind of went refining it. But my understanding now is that a lot of development happens actually in vertical slices a lot of the time. Is that true of Obsidian, or is it kind of a mix of both?
Can do. I think one of the values of vertical slices is just proving out how all of the systems work together.
Right.
Making sure that you don't just sort of assume that one is going to be there later, and don't worry about it. We know that we need to plug it into this system. It'll totally work. No, you need to actually have it there and actually prove it out to learn the lessons of, like, oh, these are actually not meshing well together. We maybe need to rethink that before we commit the mistake of taking this maybe a little bit too far in development, where it's now really expensive to try to make a fix. So one of the things that we were doing on this game is we were really cognizant to not take everything to sort of that gray box level that you were kind of talking about, where there's just gray blobs everywhere, and hold it there for too long. Because here again, we wanted to establish that sort of momentum with the team. And so we took everything to about 80%. So take this region to 80% and then put it away, and move on to the next one, and take that to about 80%. And to your point, we're kind of like building on gray blobs, and then we're adding in a little bit of art, and then we're adding in animations, and take that up to about 80%, put that away, because you learn by doing, and you get better and better at making things the more that you make them. And so we're going to get better on this first region, and we'll put it. We're going to do what we can with this first region. We'll put it away. By making the second region, we get better at making regions, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. All of a sudden, by the time you're done with the fifth, you're like, oh, I've learned so much about how to use our tools and how everything comes together. And you pick up that first region again, and you go, we've got to apply some of the learnings here. Like, holy cow, well, let's take that up a little bit more. And so then it's just sort of nudging from like 80 maybe to 85%, and going through, and then you learn something through that nudging, and then it's just sort of taking everything to that last step. And that seemed to be effective for both getting things done and then being able to go back and apply learnings that you've made along the way, as opposed to just saying, like, well, there's nothing we can do. That is 100% done, and it's not good, so we've got to ship it. That taking things to about 80% and putting it away was super, super helpful for us.
Are there aspects of the game that you feel you're particularly nervous about the reception to, like that you maybe feel like we're a bit of a risk? That would be my thing, I think, when I was putting a game out into the world. I love this aspect of the game, and maybe it was an unexpected choice, but people might not like it, and we won't know until it's released.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd sort of frame it in that degree, because we've been tremendously fortunate to be doing all of that user testing, and so we've been able to sort of identify early when it's relatively inexpensive to do so. If something wasn't particularly working, then okay, let's take that back to the workshop and kind of sand off the rough edges on that. So there's nothing really that I'm particularly worried about. I think we're going to deliver like another great must-play RPG from Obsidian, and that's the part that I'm actually excited about. I'm excited about everybody having the opportunity to play it.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's especially as you're sort of coming towards the like pointier end. This is probably more of a marketing question that isn't really your area, but I'm curious to know if, as the landscape of game design or video games have changed and the way people play video games has changed, do you factor in things like streaming culture into the way you design games now, or how you kind of approach game design at all? Because it feels like there are some games, particularly more in the indie space and stuff now, where people are trying to make things that they're like, this is a really streamable game, or something that people are really going to be talking about, and it will market itself that way. Or are you still taking a pretty traditional approach to just the game is good and people will want to play it?
Yeah, I think that's just speaking from my own personal experience. I think we're aiming a little bit more towards the latter, where let's err on the side of the things that has made Obsidian successful in the past. Like, we know how to do. We still want to make, at the end of the day, a great RPG in Obsidian's signature, with fantastical worlds to explore, with memorable characters, with a deep narrative, and with satisfying combat. Let's use that as the core of our expectations. And sort of to the earlier points, there might be bits that we want to nudge sort of along the way, like Pentiment is not the same game as Avowed. But there are some similarities there, certainly in the fantastical world to explore and the deep narrative. So I think we mostly want to stick in our own wheelhouse a little bit, which is not to say that we won't experiment a little bit, but we make Obsidian games, and we're going to keep making Obsidian games.
I would love to, speaking of Pentiment, I would love to talk a little bit about the approach to storytelling, because I think storytelling in video games is one of the most exciting things that continues to separate it from other mediums. And in a fantasy RPG like this, you have an opportunity to tell stories in a really exciting way. Yeah. Is that an aspect of the game design that really excited you in terms of, does the story come first in production and things move around it, or is it an evolving process that happens as a part of the broader picture?
That's a great question. The story definitely does come first, but it's not necessarily as fully fleshed out as you might imagine. Okay. There are certainly like big beats that you want to hit, where you're like, okay, so we know where the beginning of the story is and we know where the end is. And kind of along the way, we want to hit these marks so that we have a satisfying arc to the narrative. But if you plan things out too meticulously, you don't leave a whole lot of room for appropriate pivots that you might want to take along the way. And so where we've been most successful on Avowed has been where we have that sort of like overarching narrative, but we bring all of the disciplines together. And we say, cool, here's the vision of what we're trying to achieve, and here's the box that we're going to play in. So here are all of the constraints that we have. You're all smart people. What do you think we should do about this? How do we achieve that vision tactically? So from an area design standpoint, from a world building standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, from an environment art standpoint, an animation and VFX, audio, music, let's all get together and talk about this as creative professionals and go like, cool, what's the best way to accomplish this vision? And then map out a couple of different ways of doing that, and then see which one bears a little bit of fruit. And by bringing all of those creative people together, you get such a much better result than a single person just micromanaging every small detail and hoping that works out.
I like it too, because as you mentioned, when there's so much exploration that you can do, I feel like there is an element of your own story that you're kind of, taking yourself on. I also get decision paralysis when it comes to even just choosing what to explore first when you're presented with different options, which is the most wonderful thing about a game like that. But I feel like I have such fear in missing something that it becomes, almost impossible to try and take it all in at once. But very exciting as well. I don't even know if you can say this or talk about it, but is there a part of the game that you're most proud of And my second part to that question is there a part of the game, if this is different, that you're most excited for players to experience?
They are. Okay, they are one and the same. And I'm gonna take a slightly different tack on this one, I think. Okay, so I am most proud of and excited for people to experience the music in the game. So I've been working really, really closely with a spectacular composer by the name of Venus Theory for the past couple of months. And we've been collaborating on the soundtrack for Avowed, and it is a banger. It is absolutely beautiful. And one of the really cool things was we just instantly clicked. The second that we were in a Microsoft Teams call, just sort of video chat, and I don't know if y'all have ever had that moment where you're just simpatico with a person, where just like creatively you are 100% on the right page. He understood instantly what we were going for, and he said, "Yeah, I've got some ideas here. Like, I'm not traditionally a fantasy-style composer. I don't get the sense that you're looking for sort of generic fantasy music." And I was like, no. We want it to be recognizable fantasy, but we don't want to do generic. I have a couple of thoughts on what we can do, and we can take some inspiration maybe from our key art, which is definitely fantasy, but not generic fantasy. It's going to be something that's a little bit more unique. And so we've been jamming on music for like the past 6-8 months, and we're coming close to the end. And I'm excited to be able to say that, yeah, Venus Theory is our composer, and oh boy, I can't wait for y'all to hear the soundtrack. It is easily in one of my top video game soundtracks of all time.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I feel like music is so core to a fantasy exploration experience. There's fantasy games that I've played that when I hear the soundtrack, I'm instantly transported back there. So,
this is going to get you.
Yeah, the fact that it sounds like this will have that same effect, I think, is going to be really wonderful for a lot of people.
There's this moment early on in the game, in one of our first regions in the game, certainly the first large region. It's called Dawnshore, and early on there's this lighthouse. And like any good lighthouse, like upstairs, you can just see for miles. And so I was climbing up the lighthouse to get to the top. And then the waves were kind of lapping at the shores below, and a seagull flew by and was like, "Rah!" And all of the music swelled to what we are calling the full beans mix. And we had all the maximum beans. And I was just looking out over the entirety of Dawnshore, and it just felt right. It was so cohesive, and just sort of like the hair literally stood up on the back of my neck. I was like, okay, we're going on an adventure. This is all coming together. It feels just right.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, that gave me goosebumps. Some things don't all come together, though. Segue. I would love to, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the moments where maybe things haven't turned out the way you expected, and maybe caused some unexpected joy for the developers in the process.
We should probably have a look at
that. Okay.
Alrighty, so this is an adventure in physics.
Okay.
Oh, that poor little guy.
There's some kind of like football, Australian football goal situation happening there, though, between those two trees.
Yeah, he's having a bad day. Just right between the uprights.
Yeah. Wow.
This is an interesting confluence of so many different disciplines all coming together. This is character art and tech art and skinning and rigging and animation and tech anim, and behold the beauty that is
I don't know why it didn't
created.
occur to me that a character would have a tongue in its head.
Yeah.
Like, I know sometimes I've had those moments where, you go inside a character and you see their eyeballs by accident, and I guess this is like that, but I didn't realize it would be a movable thing that could, like, come out in that way. And it's out there.
And boy, is it out there. Waterworld. So this is our underwater effect that is being applied in what I would call the overlands, which is not underwater. This is also, in fact, kind of like a deserty kind of region. So it's a little bit odd that this is happening.
They had a lot
right
of
now.
rain that day.
A lot of rain.
A lot of rain. Amazing.
This is one of my favorites. So. The power that mouse is wielding. So clearly we had copied and pasted some behaviors from one character to another, and well, maybe we needed to rethink that one a little bit.
Oh no, leave it in. I love that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Oh.
Okay.
So here we have an interesting confluence of AI and animation, where all of these folks are jockeying for the same position, except somebody got trapped in there. So they all kind of want to move to that exact same spot so that they can perform some animations. But nope, that dude in the middle is just not moving, and so they are locked in that forever.
I love that. It's just an unsolvable problem for the AI, but it's
unsolvable.
never going to
You're still
give
doing
up.
that.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, this is so exciting! I can't wait to play the game. I think it's going to be a really incredible journey for a lot of us. I don't know about you guys, but even just hearing about the process of working on the game, it's making me excited about the adventures that I know that we're all going to have.
That's awesome. And yeah, I can't wait for you to play it. I can't wait for y'all to play it on February 18th when we release on Xbox Series X, S, and PC. So, hey, wish list that and see when you can get your hot little hands on it.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. Please join me in thanking Ryan Warden from Obsidian.
Shucks, thanks for having me.
Gonna take a lot of time out of my day. I know it will, because it's gonna be all consuming. Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your weekend.